what we've learned over the course of building this company is that we measure almost nothing in our bodies. When you compare it to any sort of mechanical system or a software system,
Yeah.
there are 50,000 sensors on every Falcon 9 rocket that goes to space. If you wore every commercially available sensor known to man in terms of what's a consumer sensor, you're really just measuring blood sugar, which is the only molecule that we can measure in real time,
Yeah.
heart rate, skin temperature, and you're using a gyro to measure your movement.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And so 3 of those are superficial, literally, like they're outside of the skin. And 1 of those is a molecule. And there are tens of thousands of molecules in your body that you'd like to be able to measure. So I try to keep track of things like blood sugar is a really useful one because for me, it's really been more lifestyle driven rather than health driven. Of why do I have brain fog in the middle of the day? It's often because of something that I ate.
Yeah.
Things like movement is a really important one. Uh, although I work at levels and this is a health company, I'm not a super optimizer. I'm not a biohacker. I'm really looking for the 80-20 of how do I not die a premature death and how do I maintain energy levels throughout the day. So some amount of movement is really important. Some amount of weight training is really important. So I try to keep
I think
track
you mentioned
of how
like
much.
after you maybe eat a lunch, you just take a walk around the block or something like
Totally.
that.
Yeah, even like a 20-30 minute walk has a really large measurable impact on how your body
So
responds
if you're
to
doing
food.
like a call, you'll try to do a walk while you do the call or something. Okay.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So protein is another one. Almost everybody does not get enough protein throughout the day. So keeping track
What
of
does
how much
protein
protein you're
do for
getting.
you?
So some of it is as
Because sometimes I've
this
seen
is
this thing of like the amount of protein I'm supposed to eat, and it's like I
yeah,
could
I
never
know.
eat that much chicken. Like
Yeah.
I like chicken, but it's not that much.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is around muscle mass. This is what Peter Attia's new book really goes into much more detail. His book is Outlive, where
Yeah.
he talks a lot about one of the strongest correlates to longevity is muscle mass. And if you lose muscle mass, you tend to die early. And the ability to build that muscle is really reliant on having enough protein in your diet, among other things. So uh, most people, I think, get about half as much protein, if I remember the data correctly, as would be optimal. So uh, protein is one that I try to optimize for. Steps, just generally speaking, movement is one that I keep track of. It's a little bit challenging because I've noticed a trend when I'm in programming mode and I'm just writing software. I tend to get like 300 steps per day, which is it's really not good. And when I'm
It's like
doing
you're going from
calls,
the bedroom to the kitchen or
yeah,
something.
exactly. It's really I average triple digit steps during programming days, which is
Uh-huh.
not great.
Not
But
good at all. Yeah.
no, but when I'm doing days where I'm taking calls, I'm doing other things, I tend to get 10 to 20,000. So it's much better on those days.
And how do you know, like, there's certain calls you're taking like literally audio only or something?
That's right. A lot of like say one-on-ones, if I don't feel like I need to be at my computer, I'll take a Zoom call because they're recorded, but I'll just do
Yeah.
it audio only and go for a walk.
Okay. Got it. Interesting. And so you're really saying for the average person, instead of like, because everyone's tracking whether it's like VO2 max and like, 17,000 other things, and they're getting blood tests every, I have friends that are getting blood tests every month or every 3 months or something like that. In some ways you're saying, okay, that just doesn't fit the 80-20 rule.
It's definitely if it's interesting to you and if that's the level of optimization that you're going for, 100% it's useful. Is it the challenge with a lot of these blood tests is they're useful to give you point in time measurements. This is there's this concept that we've talked about internally. The concept is biological observability. This is a level of depth I don't normally go into, but because you have a lot of data nerds in your audience, I think it might be useful. This concept comes from observability theory broadly, which is the mathematical dual of control theory. And the reality is that you can't control a system unless you can observe what is going on in that system. And observability theory is about how do you observe signals coming out of a black box. Assuming that you will never be able to understand the core mechanics of that system, you're just observing signals coming out of it. How do you know what is the state of what is going on in that black box? So if you imagine you're trying to model metabolic state inside of your body, but you only have like the occasional, like, oh, you took 10,000 steps today. It's like, is that really enough to know my metabolic state? Probably not. It's like, well, look, here's your glucose data. Is that enough? Probably not. How much data do you need for that? And it turns out it's a lot more than the measurement tools that we have today. And so in observability theory broadly, there are, I would say, three primitives of data: metrics, logs, and traces, which anyone who's done software development is familiar with, like a stack trace, with metrics, with adding a
Yeah.
log. These are all the same concepts, and you can apply those here, which is point in time measurements are metrics. So when you get blood work done, you have a point in time.
Yeah.
The problem,
And
as
who knows
anyone
what you
knows,
even did that morning and, whatever.
Exactly.
It's like so random.
Yep, exactly. It's highly, highly variable. You can get trends over time, and you can say, in general, I can see this number is creeping up, but you can't. What you really want is a trace. You want to understand cause and effect. I
Yeah.
did this thing, which is leading to these outcomes.
I ate peanut butter and I did this, or I did this workout, or, a lot of people do monitor their sleep. That's like a common thing today where people are wearing some sort of thing to monitor their sleep. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah. So sleep is, the way that they monitor sleep is ultimately, it's ultimately a computation based on heart rate and skin temperature and things like that. So it is really
how much
it's a downstream
or
metric.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a downstream metric of the superficial metrics that the sensors pick up. So there are only so many like fundamental pieces of data that we're able to collect, and so almost all of the other things that we do around strain, around recovery, those are all derivative measurements that are just based on the same underlying data points.